Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, What Skills Will Be Needed to Level Up the Solent? And thank you to the Business Magazine and KPMG for hosting this event. My name is David Lee, and I'm simply here to guide us through the discussion today. We've only got an hour, and there's so much to talk about, with the skills agenda in the Solent being shaped and reshaped by so many factors. Brexit, the new Freeport plan, rapid technological change, and of course, the very different working patterns that have been fueled by the pandemic. As a leading business publication in South East England, the Business Magazine looks through a regional first-hand lens at all these topics and many more. And events like this are an extension of the magazine's commitment to informing and connecting the business community in the region. Please go to businessmag.co.uk, if you're not joining from the site anyway, to stay up to date with all the latest business news and sign up to the magazine's newsletters. Okay, so briefly what will happen today is this. We'll hear some opening remarks from the Right Honourable Anne Milton, the former Minister of State for Skills and Apprenticeships, and Anne will share her insights on the current and future skills situation in the Solent region. We'll then move into a panel discussion, and I very much hope you'll participate by posting questions and giving your thoughts on two polls that we'll launch during the discussion. The polls and the questions can be accessed via the Business Magazine website or signing up via Slido, which is very simple to use. Simply key in slido.com and add your code #SolentSkills. Please can everybody do that, because it is really important that we get your feedback on the questions of the day. Okay, enough from me. Let's listen to our first panelist today. It's a recorded film by Anne Milton, as I say, former Minister of State for Skills and Apprenticeships. So we'll go straight over to Anne.
It's such a shame that I can't be with you today, but it's great to be taking part. I'm sure you'll have a brilliant discussion, and hopefully what I've got to say will stimulate some sufficiently controversial points to ensure it's a very lively day. I think that the first thing, and I say this as a former Minister for Apprenticeships, is use your levy. It doesn't backfill the costs of having an apprentice, so that 20% off the job isn't backfilled. You have to carry that cost yourself. And it's also true that it doesn't cover the wages of an apprentice, but it does cover the training. So use your levy wisely. Think about taking people who haven't got any qualifications when they leave school, because in that group of people, there will be people with the skills that you want. Use your levy, employ the apprentices, and put pressure on the system. Whitehall is not always the best driver of change. And I think particularly on skills, the different skills needs of Cornwall are going to be very different from the skills needs of Hull. And I think that there is a very good case for greater devolution, local involvement, because actually local authorities, combined authorities, know their area well, they know their businesses well. So I think absolutely there should be more devolvement of skills and skills budgets. Freeports were around before Brexit. You know, they tend to be sold as a consequence of Brexit. That's not the case. But without a doubt, that is a brilliant opportunity, massive opportunity to employ some of those people and older adults, not just young people we're talking about, older adults who are in low-skilled jobs. Upskill them, retrain them, give them the confidence they need to take on new roles, and you will thrive. Skills is an extremely important part of the COVID recovery, but I think what we have to remember that the need to upskill the population existed well before COVID. What we've seen during COVID is an acceleration, I think, of some of the things that were going to happen anyway in the next 10 years. The estimates were that in 10 years' time, 35% of jobs won't exist anymore. This is pre-COVID. Well, I should think that has been accelerated, and therefore the skills people need, we've got to accelerate the whole programme. Productivity has been an issue in this country for a long time, and that is despite government's best efforts. I always think it's important to realise that governments do want to increase productivity. They also want to make sure that there's equal opportunities for everybody. If we want to make people more productive, give more opportunities to people, we have to make sure those opportunities are distributed equally. In the Solent region, I think manufacturing and maritime are very big issues. Those are areas where women are underrepresented. The call to business is to say, look elsewhere for the skills that you need in groups of the population that wouldn't automatically come into your industry. If you're a business leader, my advice would be send a blanket email to all the further education colleges, all the sixth form colleges and all the schools and say you want to come in and talk to the young people and older adults at the adult learning centres about the opportunities that exist within your organisation for young people. Don't be fussy about qualifications. There's been a lot of talk about qualifications recently. There's been less focus on undergraduate degrees. So I believe now is the time to look at undergraduate degrees and say, are they fit for purpose? At the end of a 3-year degree, with maybe 50 grand's worth of debt, we have a very ungranular view of what skills you've acquired in that period of time. I think it is high time we started to unpack the undergraduate degree. For somebody who's worked for 2 years with the further education sector, I know that many people, grab whatever's going. So the mere fact that there was a white paper is a really positive thing. I don't think it goes nearly far enough. I think what's really important is that we've also got to concentrate on the skills you get before you get a level 3. So level 3 is the equivalent of an A level or a T level. What about those people who haven't yet got to that point? We've now got the skills bill, which is making its way through Parliament. And I think that fact has been raised already. There's talk about the lifetime learning entitlement, which is a good thing, but the ambition is to bring it in 2025. I think that's way too late. This is a problem that we need to address now. And if you go back to what I said previously, this was urgent before the pandemic. I think there's a brilliant opportunity for businesses in the Solent region to talk to universities and say, actually, this is what is lacking. You're chucking out graduates, but they don't have these 10 skills that are essential in the workplace. We need you to be running programs, and I don't think they should be optional, to build leadership skills, to build team working, to build digital skills, to build your ability to network in the business environment. It is up to undergraduates at the moment to acquire those skills in the workplace. Employers get frustrated because they didn't have them when they came in. Absolutely, they should be part of an undergraduate degree, and business should be talking to higher education and further education establishments about that. I'm sorry I can't be with you today. It would have been great to be part of this discussion. And I think the really important thing about this event is to look in places that you wouldn't normally look, ask the questions that you wouldn't normally ask, and maybe float some really controversial ideas. But I'm sure it will be a fabulous debate.
We are sorry she can't join the discussion today, but we do have a great panel to get stuck into some of those big issues that she raised. And I'll introduce our panel one by one and ask them an initial question to get some ideas out there to start the discussion. Let's begin with Mark Essex, who's Director of Skills at KPMG. So Mark, in the light of what Anne said there and your own work, if you were advising someone in their early to mid-teens today making subject choices at school, as what should they be studying, what's your advice?
Well, it's a great question. I think actually, I'm not sure it's about the particular subject, but I would ask them to think quite carefully about the sort of skills they will need for the career they want in the future. And it's not always about the academic subject, if you like, the level 3 qualification you get at A level, but some of the things you get along the way. So, for example, people who study music might be quite good at getting people together in an orchestra, arranging the logistics around that. It's pretty helpful for the events industry. So whichever subjects you have a passion for and want for your future, think around it as well about the sort of skills you might pick up while you're studying them.
Okay, and Karen, we'll come back to some of those points Mark raised there. And And we're just going to raise the first poll now. It's going to come up as a word cloud. Which skill do you think will be the most valuable in the future workplace? And we're just looking for a word or a phrase here. Which skill do you think will be the most valuable in the future workplace? I know you can't really bring it down to one, but stick a word in there on the poll chat, and we'll come back to the results of that later. And while you fill that in, I'll move on to our next panelist, who's Professor Karen Stanton, who's Vice Chancellor of Solent University. Welcome, Karen. Who should decide what we teach our young people or what we offer to them, Karen? Anne Milton suggested we maybe look too much to government to fix things and need more autonomy on skills provision at local level. Would you agree with that?
Thank you, David. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I would, actually. And I think, we've got a fantastic opportunity here, really, in the Solent region to do exactly that. The LEP has done, for example, a huge amount of work on what the skills requirements are. The Chamber of Commerce is leading an initiative around creating a local skills improvement plan. And I think working alongside the education providers of FE and HE, business, and all of the key organisations coming together, we have it really within our own capacity and capabilities, if you like, as a region, to come together and to really focus on this agenda and to really determine what I would call a local skills ladder, creating that ladder that essentially gives opportunity, whether you want to study a particular subject or you want to study for a particular qualification. I think getting that local skills ladder in place is essential. But I think we've got the components there to do it as a region.
Okay, and just on that very interesting point Anne made, Karen, as well, that we should ask if the current 3-year undergraduate degree is actually fit for purpose. And do you think that what we have at the moment is suitable for the skills needs of the 21st century economy?
Yeah, I mean, how I would respond, I think, to that point about the undergraduate degree is that universities really are constantly looking to work with business and industry to engage them in the process of creating that curriculum that is delivered through the degree. And I think you would find actually that most universities now, alongside the specific subject, are very tuned in to the skills agenda. So what we might call, for example, the softer skills or the key kind of work-based skills around team working, negotiation, etc. Those are actually embedded in undergraduate degrees now. We have something called a graduate attribute. That's all around making sure that those particular skills are actually incorporated into those degrees. And, for a university like Solent, for example, that's really focused on what we call real world learning, incorporating that skill set, making sure that those graduates are exposed, through internships, through placements, through the opportunity to engage with business and industry is actually part of our curriculum. So whilst I would accept the point about we need to continue to look and refresh at what that undergraduate degree includes, I think that universities are really operating in that space already.
Okay, and Steph Nienaltowski, CEO of Shaping Portsmouth, and Steph, through that role, you're setting an ambitious vision to make Portsmouth the UK's #1 city in which to invest, live, learn, work and visit. That is very ambitious, of course, but what about what Karen's just said and what Anne Milton said from the sort of other end of the telescope? What are businesses in your area, Steph, saying to you about the kind of graduates they're getting? Are they getting graduates who can do leadership and team working, and do they have the tech skills? Can they network? Can they communicate? What's your experience of that?
My experience of it is really what I think we've all experienced and witnessed ourselves. They're not or necessarily prepared because businesses are not investing time to work with FE and HE and 11 to 16-year-old schools to actually say what they need. So for instance, in 2019, just prior to COVID, Shaping Portsmouth and its partners ran a survey of 300 local businesses and basically asked them 3 questions. What skills are you short of today? What skills are preventing you from growing? in the next 5 years? And have you got an apprentice? And if not, why not? And whatever. Of these skills that they are short of today, management and leadership was number one, IT was number two, and engineering was number three. When we flip that question around to say what are the skills that are preventing your growth in the next 5 years, engineering became number one, management and leadership number two, and IT number three. So effectively, what they can see with the technology and the way that the whole of the technology revolution is going to remove the low-end jobs and replace some high-end jobs, they are looking to actually invest in getting engineering qualifications done. And engineering is a broad thing. So, but it's no point the businesses moaning about not having the adequate skilled people coming out of HE or FE if they don't invest the time and work with HE and FE to get it right. So in Portsmouth and the surrounding area, last week, we ran a 2-hour seminar with 56 businesses and the 3 leaders of the 3 Travel to Learn colleges. And each Travel to Learn college leader talked about the new FE white paper and what it meant for them and the help they need from business. And then we had breakout rooms, etc. And we are going to be driving businesses towards advising the whole piece of FE, HE, and training providers as to how we do it. That's what we're doing in Portsmouth, and that's one of our 5 pillars, to make us the number 1 city to learn in. But but the one question which I thought was brilliant that came out of that was a business leader said, if I give you an hour a month of my time, what do I get back for it? Oh my goodness me, the 3 college principals answered that brilliantly. And one of them, Mike Gaston from Haverton South Downs College, said, I'll give you the employees you need in the future. Really great answer. So yeah, fabulous.
And finally, Brooke Hoskins, who is Product and Training Services Director with BAE Systems. Brooke, just first of all, come to that point that Steph made, management and leadership, IT and engineering as 3 key sort of areas of deficit from business perspective at the moment. How do those 3 particular areas look from BAE Systems perspective?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be part of such a fascinating conversation. So, yeah, absolutely. We've been struggling to recruit engineers ever since I've been part of the defence industry, and we probably still will be when I retire. But because of that, we take the responsibility very seriously at BAE. And I think, in contrast to perhaps what Steph was saying, put a lot of time and effort into it, from STEM outreach to try and persuade those who maybe wouldn't consider a career in STEM to do so before they've even got to GCSE level. We're partnering with the UTC to make sure that the curriculum there is what we need it to be, and to make sure that the kids who attend have got a clear idea about the opportunities to come and work with us and what that would look like. This year we've participated in Kickstart as well, which has been a fantastic way to give some young people an opportunity to discover what it's like to work with us. And that's been very successful for us and something we'll continue. And then we do the panoply of the usual things like apprenticeships, graduates, but also investing. And it was interesting to hear Anne talking about it in older opportunities for older people. So we've been very successful with the STEM Returners program, attracting people back to STEM careers after a career break. And all of this contributes to our eternal desire to get more people interested in careers in STEM and defence, and improving that diversity. That's also led us to question the universities we go to for our graduates. Our requirement to have a 2-1, is that really necessary? Because we need to broaden our aperture. And I think COVID has given us an opportunity to open our pools as to where we recruit from as we talk about the future ways of working.
Okay, just Mark, can I just come back to you on just the point that Brooke touched on there about, do you really need a 2-1 to go in? And Anne Milton was talking about, let's forget traditional qualifications. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm lucky that I've got a 2-1, which means I don't have quite the same skin in the game on the question. I mean, I think the level 6 qualification you gain at university demonstrates, as Karen said, really much. You can read into much more than the syllables that make your CV. Depending on the institution and what goes into that qualification, you also got an expectation that someone who studied history can make very good judgments about the quality of source material they're looking at, that they're able to make an argument, that they have critical thinking skills, because you don't get a 2-2 or a third without those. So I think businesses are looking to sift their potential applicants and make some decisions about who to hire. But right now, like Brooke was saying, there are some industries where, I mean, they are desperate for people. And, engineers, in hospitality, we know that you can't get the staff. And so perhaps people are saying, well, maybe what we need to do now is look deeper. We used to rely on 3 syllables, 2-1 maths in my case, but actually we're going to have to look through that and understand what people did at university. And if I look, if I look at the skills employers talk to me about, judgment, flexibility, adaptability, I'd be trying to understand a bit more about the career people have had while they've been studying, and not just how they did in that specific thing they took exams in.
Okay, before we come to the results of the first poll, Brooke, I'm just going to come back to you. You mentioned in your opening remarks this the war for talent that you're engaged in the defence industry, and I'm just interested how that's changed and how the perspective on it's changed in terms of remote working, which we're going to come to in a minute. And are you employing, for example, people virtually now who are nowhere near the base they would have been expected to be in? And will that become more of a thing in future?
Definitely, it has changed. I think we were lucky last year in that we were one of the few industries that really kept going. So we were able to recruit when last year when the competition was slightly less fierce. But we are now looking. There are some jobs you can't do from your living room. There's no way someone's going to build a ballistic missile defense radar in their bedroom, and I don't want them doing that. And some of our secret networks, you have to be on site to access them. But the vast majority of the jobs we have, you can do from anywhere. So absolutely, we are now saying this is a job that can be done from anywhere. When I say anywhere, it has to be somewhere in the UK because of export licensing. But essentially, that's the only boundary we have in terms of where those people are to do that work.
And Steph, are businesses in Portsmouth open-minded in that respect, in terms of that virtual talent?
Yes, they are. The one thing that we're very proud about in our city and beyond is our skills and employability program that we're running. And we've got all the major partners playing. We've got a group of 12 recruitment companies who are sitting as a focus group to our right-hand side, and we've got a group of 20 companies of all sizes and shapes to our left-hand side, and we have regular feedback and dialogue on a closed loop process with them, whilst the main body of the group, the colleges, the training providers, Prince's Trust, the council, etc., are working on this strategy. So yes, I mean, I heard the BBC interview recently. 43 of the top 50 employment companies by employee count are not planning to go back to the office. We've already got an incredibly micro SME island. Of our 8,000 businesses, 6,500 have 9 or less employees. Our co-working space is already quite a growing part of our industry. And therefore, we're already kind of used to it. And the last 15 months has already proved it to be. When I went to work for a small company some years ago, the owner said to me, I'm not letting my people work at home. I don't trust that they'll actually get on and be productive. That whole scene has changed now. I can't see us going back to a 3, 4, 5 day a week, into the motorway system. And actually, I'm more productive from being at home. And I think businesses that actually are looking, to actually, steal that particular march on productivity can see that coming.
Yeah, and Karen, briefly, what are the implications for you of that whole change in mindset of where we are going to be working? I mean, I know my own daughter started with a law firm, and she's been in the office 3 days in 8 months. How are you helping young people to completely change that mindset of what a professional or other job is going to look like in 2021 and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it's absolutely about ensuring, our graduates are as I say, work ready and future ready, and that includes, what other panel members have referenced around how work and the shape of work is going to change. But, aligned to that, there's massive shifts that COVID has brought about, which means that society generally is going to make a big change. So I think in response to that, obviously, how we teach is changing, and we're planning for a very different way of teaching from September onwards, which will include, of course, a mix of online and face-to-face. And what we're hearing actually from students, from those that are joining us, is that actually that's how they want to work, that's how they want to study going forward. They want that opportunity to be able to, look at lectures online, reflect on what they've heard, play that lecture back again. But equally, they want the opportunity to be in the room with the expert and with their fellow students as well, to create that kind of community. And I think that community of learners is really important, as it will continue to be in the workplace, actually, how you're connecting with the fellow members of your team, how you're connecting with your boss, how you're connecting with your line manager. So I think, as students work their way through university, and as universities adapt to how we deliver education, I think that will help those students prepare for what will look very different in terms of a working environment going forwards.
I'll try not to lapse into cynicism about some students saying they prefer not to come into 9 o'clock lectures after a heavy night out, but that's another issue entirely, and that's one for the generations rather than where we are now. So right, before we move on, I'm going to ask first of all if we can see what the first poll question threw up. So is it possible to see the results of that word cloud there? I'm going to have to maximize this a bit. I mean, as Mark was saying before, flexibility and adaptability, communication skills, and so on. A lot of the words that are thrown up there are very much the things that we talked about initially. And I mean, sorry, Karen, if I can just come back to you briefly, when you're being taught at university by a subject specialist, how do they teach leadership, or how do they help teach communication or flexibility or whatever, because that's not necessarily their skill set?
Yeah, so just to give a quick example, if you like, we'd probably set up what we call maybe a live brief, which would, essentially be a project-based activity. And we want those students to engage in kind of all aspects of taking that project forward. Many of the courses we teach, for example, are very practical, media-related courses, fashion courses, digital tech courses. Those students have to work, if you like, with a live brief, which puts them in an industry or a professional environment and operate as if they're working within that environment. So that's how we, if you like, deliver those kinds of skills and grow those kinds of skills alongside the subject-specific brief as well.
Okay, thanks very much. So we're just going to put the second poll out there now. I mean, we've already talked. We all know, I think, the skills future is inevitably going to be shaped more by where we work and how we work in future, because of this kind of hybrid model that we're necessarily moving towards, and has been rapidly accelerated, of course, over the last 16 months. But how do you personally feel about returning to the office? So can we launch that poll, please? And it's basically asking you a range of options. I can't wait. So get onto Slido and answer this. I can't wait to get back to the office. I'm easing myself in gently. I'm not sure I'm going to see what everyone else does. I'll go in for the important set pieces, or I'm never going back. So there's quite a range of options there, and it would be very interesting to see what people feel, because I mean, it's almost like a kind of personality test in itself, this poll, So while people are answering that, I'm just going to come to you, Mark. I mean, have we changed for good? Have we changed the way that we work for good? And what lessons do you think businesses have learned over the last 16 months or so about the way people want to work, and what will it stick, or will there be some drift back to maybe unhelpful practices that went on before?
So a really good question, and the short answer is I don't know, and I think it's because it's unknowable. So I know an awful lot of businesses who have exited their office real estate completely, or they've got rid of 60% because somewhere out of the ether, people have decided that the answer is 2 days a week in the office, 3 days a week at home, probably because you can do 2 days, stay in a hotel and live quite a long way from your office. I don't know where 2 days has come from. I'm pretty humble about my ability to predict that, and I'm not often humble about predictions because I quite like making them. But the reason I'm humble about it is because I don't think any individual employee or even business leader is in charge. Let's say you and I wanted to meet, David, and you work Monday, Wednesday in the office, and I work Tuesday, Thursday. We've stacked up all our meetings for those days because doing this sort of experience from an open plan office is, for want of a better word, rubbish. So you stack up all your interactions into your 2 days, and then, well, which of us is going to come in an extra day? And that's just two organizations coming together, and one of us is in 3 days. Now, let's say I decide, David, I'm going to come and see you. Well, if I'm coming in for the day, all the things I was going to do on Zoom, I now want those people to come in and join me. And if I'm senior, I get to choose. So now 8 junior people are in the office because you and I wanted to meet. My point is, to get this to work requires quite a lot of coordination and collaboration in learning of new habits. And that's really difficult to predict. Think about email. We've had that technology 30 years. There's been 2 innovations that I can think of, out of office and the focused inbox. And still we have people emailing, fancy a cigarette, and here's your £10 million contract. And they have the same prioritization. We haven't learned to use that tool when it's been 30 years. So I'm quite humble. I mean, I think we're going to do a lot of hybrid working. I think we've learned that this is great for some things, but quite hard to innovate, quite hard to imbibe your culture into someone through this 2mm lens, and quite hard for people to learn judgment and overhear your conversations. And how did you handle that client? And why did you do that? And were they raising their eyebrows when you said that? Or that doesn't work like this. So my final point on the future is while it might work for us really well, I've got a corner office. I don't get that in Canary Wharf. It's nice. And I've got relationships I've built over my career, which I can now use, which means my digital interactions are better than if I didn't. But I think you said you had a daughter who spent 3 days at work in 8 months. I bet she's finding it a lot harder because she doesn't have that social capital, hasn't built the networks. So one of the big inclusion issues I worry about at the moment is, have we thought about youngsters who are coming straight into this world without having built the platform which all of us can build on from the physical world that they'll never experience or might not experience.
Okay.
So it's a problem.
Yeah, some interesting points there. I mean, Brooke, as somebody who is working for a large company, how challenging is it when, you know, people are making different judgments about how long they want to come into the office for? Like Mark said, there's this sort of, you know, oh yeah, I'll be in the office 2 days, at home 3, or the other way around, whatever. How difficult is it for BAE Systems to accommodate people's completely different appetites to return to work for periods of time? And the point that Mark made about, if somebody makes a decision that impacts upon a team, how tricky is that going to be for a large company like yours?
So I think one other lesson we learnt from the pandemic is you have to trust and empower people to make sensible decisions. And I'm determined that we don't have the rubber band twang back, because quite honestly, prior to COVID, we were 8 till 5, everyone in 5 days a week kind of culture. And I think that contributed to our lack of diversity and probably wasn't good for creativity or productivity in some instances. So I agree, there are lots of logistical challenges if you try and write it down and control it centrally. So I think what we're trying to do is trust and empower people to make sensible decisions at the very local level. I am extremely conscious that people will be looking at me as the leader of this part of the organisation, and I'm trying to avoid having a Tuesdays in the office kind of day, because everyone will pile in, and before we know it, everyone will be in on a Tuesday. So we've been having conversations, which we've called a team charter, about our expectations and making clear that we think every meeting can be a hybrid meeting, that units of time are not whole days. So, why is it better to travel at 6 o'clock than it is to travel at 12 o'clock? Can't you travel at 12 o'clock, do the rest of the work from home and work an hour later in the evening if you need to? So there's all sorts of interesting assumptions we have about how life worked that we're now questioning.
Okay. And Steph, just conversely, you said that, in Portsmouth, there's a huge amount of very small kind of micro businesses. Are those micro businesses relatively well placed to decide whether they're at home, they're in co-working space, they're in their small office, whatever? How is that shaping up for you in Portsmouth?
It's shaping up actually, very well, if you pardon the pun. We were named as the 6th best city in the UK to start a remote business from last year. And whilst I don't, sort of hang my hat on any metric or any survey like that, it's actually very true. As I said, we've got the co-working space already, and we've very much got a very dynamic and very broad, set of those flexible, easy in, easy out spaces. The university run 3 world-class buildings, and really the cost of entry to that and the lease you can get on that is literally 3 months long at times, and it's less than sort of £90 a month in some levels. We have churches who have actually converted their entire main sort of hall to co-working spaces, and that's St Luke's Church in Lamport. And again, that is something that is an incredibly cool and funky place to work as well, if I may say. But it's also easy in and easy out. So I think we're well placed to support the revolution, whatever's going to happen with working. And every small business owner I've seen, because they've had to allow their people to work at home, they've got off of this trust issue that they had with their productivity. And actually video cameras have helped, rather than just having them all as audio calls as well, so they can actually see them and whatever else. So I'm very excited about it. I work 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday and Thursday, and to be honest with you, some of my meetings have got 23 different organizations at the meeting. To get 23 people to travel into Portsmouth, park, attend an hour and a half meeting, and then spend that time going back to where they came from, that's an incredible hit. So at times we're going to pick our silver bullets. Some meetings will be virtual, and some very much will be face-to-face when, as my previous speakers have said, the complexity or the social element of it is important. So I think we're well placed to do so.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to a few questions from the chat. Have we downplayed the need for soft skills in the last year or so in our drive to ensure everyone embraces technology in the workplace? Mark, I'll just throw that at you briefly.
I don't think so. I think they're getting more important. The skills that I'm having to work on and develop are things like making films, expressing myself succinctly, as you asked me to do, because we're doing more like digital events like this, writing for impact. I can't rely on people picking things up from osmosis anymore. I have to deconstruct what I'm doing and think much more carefully about how I transmit and coach and lead people. So I think soft skills are getting more important. Now we're doing more down the wire.
Okay, and Karen, just on that technology point, I mean, we're asking universities to do everything as well. We're asking you to give people a degree. We're asking you to teach them leadership, communications. What about the tech skills side? And do companies need to train people in tech skills to do the job they do? Or should individuals take more responsibility for the tech skills that they will need in a range of different kind of jobs and throughout their career?
I just think it's crucial that we are enabling students and graduates of the future to have that skill set, that suite of skills, that digital suite of skills. It's absolutely essential, I have to say, going going forward. I mean, in terms of who takes responsibility for that, I think universities, colleges have a massive role to play in terms of embedding those skills and the opportunity to learn those skills within the curriculum. But I think, and it goes back a little bit to what Steph was saying earlier, it's also really important that, we hear from business and industry and from the professions about exactly what the tech skills they require are, so that we can go about supporting embedding that in the curriculum. So I think there's a partnership, there's a relationship here that has to be strengthened. It has to be built. It has to be strengthened, so that we can support and deliver those skills that are needed in the workplace. And they will be different. Different professions will require different tech skills going forward. So we need to have that understanding. We need to hear from business about exactly what is required, so we can support the development of that.
Mark, do you think individuals are kind of generally hungry to take on more skills, soft skills and tech? I'm just thinking about a year ago, 16 months ago, I hadn't done any of these online events and a lot of in-person events. I had not done any podcasting. And you get to a point where you think, oh my God, can I do this? And we've all been there in the last 16 months, I'm sure. Can I do this particular thing? Has that made us hungrier, do you think, and made us more aware of what we can learn when we're put under pressure?
That's a really good question. I don't think there's a standard answer. I think it comes down to one's sort of personal risk appetite. I mean, I love learning new skills. I think it's fun. I like the intellectual challenge of it. But others feel nervous, especially when they're being asked to try out new skills for the first time. And there are some things it's sort of acceptable to be bad at. Oh, I don't know how iPhones work, or I don't know how to mute myself. And that's kind of sort of funny. There are some things it's not okay to not be very good at. It's sort of not okay to be bad at writing a clear article. It's seen as something everybody ought to be able to do. People don't like their writing being criticized. It's a bit like writing poetry. You don't want other people to read it. So I think when you're asking people to try something new that they haven't ever done before, but they're experiencing their career, that can sometimes come with a bit of resistance. Others, it sort of depends where they are in their career. If they're someone who perhaps hasn't been so successful, when you throw the Monopoly board up in the air, suddenly you find that, introverts, for example, love virtual events, because they would never have put their hand up in a room full of 50 people, and now they're all over the chat. So some people have really found themselves and exploited the new world. So I just think, I think it's quite good. I think we've got a new diversity. People have, you've got a more diverse set of thinkers than you thought you had, because you've tapped into something you already had, but couldn't channel through your existing mechanisms. It's quite exciting. Not everybody is on board, but I think it's good news.
I'm just going to go to a few of the questions in the Q&A. I'll put this one to you, Brooke. Hugh Chapman, saying, we represent companies currently recruiting over 100 apprentices. What more can be done to encourage more people to apply for apprenticeship opportunities? And what's your experience of the different range of apprenticeships at BAE Systems?
So I'm lucky being part of a big organisation. We've got a big apprenticeship infrastructure, so they're recruited for us centrally, and we get more applicants than we can take on. And one of the things we've done recently with the Maritime Enterprise Zone is to look at a sort of clearinghouse for apprenticeships. So we get more than we can take on. Is there a way we can pass them on to other smaller employees who perhaps don't have that brand recognition that we would have? We do the full range of apprenticeships, from craft apprenticeships through to degrees, and those that go on to do masters as well. And our experience is really very good. I think we do have a lot of graduate recruitment, and that works very well too. But the apprentices tend to be a bit more stable and loyal, and we find a lot less attrition in that group. So no less talent, but a lot less attrition. So it's pretty good for us. And I'm a huge supporter of apprenticeships. And that comes as someone who was an out and out, straight to university kind of person. And I found it quite a revelation to me. But as a mother of 2 boys now, I kind of think, well, yeah, if they want to do something practical and related to industry, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you get the same qualification without the debt on the end of it?
Okay, and back to you, Steph. Just another question in the chat. Is there too much focus given to degree courses and not enough to practical training and apprenticeships? And you've touched on this a little bit already, but where are the sectoral skills gaps at the moment that you're seeing in Portsmouth? And where do we need to do more to plug them?
I think as a person speaking who didn't go to university back in the day, but having had 4 children, 3 of which you have and 1 haven't, there is an argument to be had on both sides of it. I've got people who work for me who started work in the retail, and they're now running my events department, and they're running it brilliantly. Equally, I've got people who went to university to do digital marketing as a degree, and they're running our website and development. So I think you have to have that blend. What the commitment I will give to every young and not so young person in the Greater Portsmouth area is that we are not going to cherry pick, particular people or particular courses. We had a guy who came on one of our community-based courses because he couldn't read. And when we asked him at 55 years of age, what's your objective? He said, I'd like to walk into a restaurant and order a meal from the menu myself, and we cannot forget that there are people at that end of the spectrum. Equally, we have people who have been in industry for many years and need to transform their skills. We need to find a route to do that as well. So for me, I think it's always going to be a blend. And that's why our skills and employability strategy is looking at things with the Hampshire Chamber called the Silver Academy. And that it denotes the colour of your hair and maybe that position in life, and what do we need to do to give those people, a second, career opportunity and whatever. So that's the blend we're certainly aiming for, and it's one that I know that we're going to be, very successful on, given the support we've got from all of the providers. Okay, one thing that we've not talked about, Karen, is the skills bill that was touched on by Anne Milton at the start. What do you want to see? What do you want to see coming out of the bill that would be helpful from where you're sitting? And how can businesses listening today sort of engage with that process? And what do you think businesses are looking for from what you're hearing?
Yeah, so I think just linking, if you like, that question to what Steph has just said as well, what the skills bill does provide with this lifetime kind of skills guarantee that the government has embedded within the bill is the opportunity, if you like, for every citizen to potentially draw down funding to support the development of their skills. And you may choose that funding to undertake an undergraduate degree, or you may choose that funding to dip in and dip out of education through your lifetime. So I think there is an opportunity with the changes that the bill will introduce to, as a region, grab that and think about, exactly what we want to achieve in the region, linking the education that the colleges and the universities and the training providers provide to the skill set. So I think, the bill does, through that lifetime skills guarantee, does offer opportunities really to kind of think again. And I think in terms of how businesses engage with that, it is back, to what a number of panelists have said, really, which is, it's critical to get that relationship between the providers and the business sector working, to get it functioning, so that, we're opening up the dialogue, we're listening to what businesses want, and we are, as an education sector, responding to that, because there is an opportunity, with that government agenda, to use some of the funding that's going to be available, through the changes that are going to be brought in, but also particularly to focus on a local skills improvement plan. Because, that's at the heart of that of that bill. So, you know, there is an opportunity there, I think, with that bill to really, really start that conversation in the region about what's required.
And Steph, do you think when we do get a new skills bill, there is a tendency for, there's always criticism that the skills system is too slow to react to what's needed in the economy. You know, is that still a problem? Whenever we get a new bill, things take, you know, is a long time to turn around. Is that your experience? And how do we actually speed things up? And is what's happened over the last year or so an opportunity to do better?
Yeah, the simple answer is yes. It's far too slow to react, but it's not a criticism of the curriculum, the schools, the colleges or the universities. You know, it is simply, you know, the market is very dynamic, whichever area, region, or country you're in, and therefore you have to find a way of making sure that within the curriculum there are abilities to actually move that skills towards what is coming and what is happening in the market. People often decry the creative industries. If you're running your own creative industry, then by golly, you've got a number of sub skills that aren't obvious from the painting you draw or whatever else. You've got to know the else. If you are a painter and decorator, right, in the construction industry, and you don't know how to do maths, your estimates and your purchase of your products are going to be way out, and you lose money on every job. So people often look at the job title and actually make a decision about it. What we need to do is make sure that between the senior schools, the FE, the HE, and businesses, we constantly keep this marriage of those four partnerships solid, regular, and productive. So within the curriculum that is handed down, we actually maximize it to its completeness of what the industries in that region need. And that's what we're trying to certainly do here in Portsmouth.
Yeah, you get a prize there, Steph, for answering a question that you'd not even been asked, which was one of the questions was to develop workplace skills and character strengths. How important does the panel feel the creative arts curriculum offer is? So you did touch on that a little bit there. So thank you for your foresight in answering that. I'm going to ask now. We're getting to the stage where you're expected to answer highly complex, nuanced questions in about 20-30 seconds. So, Mark, I'll come to you first. Business leaders are increasingly recruiting on the basis of a greater mix of commitment and attitude as well as skills. Do you think that is being conveyed effectively to education providers and to individuals? Or is it true? Do you agree?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, look, you can overcome a lot of adversity and even skills gaps with a good attitude. If you are able to take a risk and you think, look, I've got 50% of what I need, I've got a good foundation. Degrees are very good for giving people good foundational skills around critical thinking and judgment. So I back myself, and I'll use my phone and some YouTube to top up some technical gaps. That attitude of let's give it a go, that can be really, really powerful. It can also get people into a lot of trouble. So I think it depends on the role. I think if you're designing a ballistic missile system, blagging it perhaps isn't the right approach. And if you're encouraging people to be more confident and take a few more risks, perhaps if they're in a selling role or they're trying to be entrepreneurial, then that's great. So the right attitude for the right job, yeah, I can believe that is becoming more important.
Okay. Brooke, do you think there'll be a trend of people moving to a more of an independent contractor type scenario within bigger businesses? So sort of individuals or teams having kind of more autonomy. And I don't know whether that question's linked to the changing working patterns, but interested to see what you think about that.
More autonomy, yes. Whether that means they'd work as independent contractors or not is another step, and I wouldn't profess to know the answer to that. I think IR35 has had a lot of an impact on contractors, certainly in our part of the world. But autonomy, yes, and we need to get the speed of decision making and the distance from the centre where the decisions are made to the coalface much shorter.
Okay, we've not talked about the Solent Freeport either. Karen, how is the kind of education system addressing the potential of Solent Freeport, and what is that potential?
Well, actually, there's a really exciting initiative underway, which potentially could deliver significant support in terms of skills into that Freeport, which is the creation of what we're calling an Institute of Technology. It's a government initiative, government funded, and it brings together universities, colleges, and business and industry across the region. And the focus of that institute would be absolutely on maritime, on logistics, and on digital, and on tech, and on green and the sustainability agenda. And that institute would essentially provide a set of qualifications all the way through from level 3, which is A level, all the way through to master's level. And if we are successful in gaining funding for that, it will sit, I think, alongside that Freeport development. And of course, the important thing then would be to really engage the business and in the industry in the development of that technology, that Institute of Technology going forward.
Okay, and Steph, we're at a very early stage, but how should businesses be thinking about the opportunities presented by Solent Freeport?
I think for a lot of our businesses, it won't be an option because of the micro nature of them. We have 40 businesses over 250 employee count in our city. What we need to do is actually now make sure that we actually work with the supply chain of companies north of us and outside of our city and region. I think they are probably the people that will look to do it. We've got production and manufacturing companies already talking about it. I think it's going to be quite an exciting, prospect for both, ports in the region, and it's certainly what I know. One thing that all the local councils and the chamber are going to make sure that we don't go off at it, in our individual pieces, but we look at this as a collective across the region. Because whilst there is occasionally a rivalry between cities in the South Coast, this is one where it has to be a pan-region approach, because I think there's upside, throughout the region for everybody. Jobs, and highly paid jobs as well, which is something that we are looking to improve, certainly in our city at the moment.
Okay, thanks, Steph. We are coming to the end now. I'm just going to ask each of the panelists just speak to the people listening in today to let's assume this kind of wide range of kind of different businesses out there. In terms of skills, what's the one takeaway from the chat today, Mark? First of all, what's the one takeaway in 20 seconds?
I think we've got to be much more granular about analysing the skills we have, the skills a job description might need, and what we can offer an employer. It's not just about your job title. It's about underneath that, I have this set of skills that I can move in different ways. Okay, Brooke?
A career in STEM will set you up for life, and it doesn't have to be a decision you made at 18 that you can't unmake. Come and see us at any point.
Karen?
Yeah, I would say talent is everywhere across this region. Currently, opportunity is not, and I think it's hugely important that leaders right across the region get together to absolutely focus on this agenda. And Steph, the final word to you briefly.
Communication from the schools, the FEs, the HE, and businesses, and a partnership that actually is sustainable for those four elements. And I think if we put that together, then we will only succeed in the journey that we're on. The last thing we need to do, and everybody has a role to play in this, we need to inspire people to actually achieve their ceiling of their ambition, and we don't do enough of that.
Great stuff. Thank you, Steph, and to Mark, and to Karen, and to Brooke, and to Anne Milton for her comments at the start. Thanks again to the Business Magazine and KPMG for hosting the event today, and to you all for participating. You'll get a feedback form to give you thoughts on the event, and the video of the webinar will be posted on the Business Magazine website. So thanks again, and all the very best to all of you in your efforts to increase the economic prosperity and the employment prospects in the Solent area, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much for listening. Bye.